Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Kesubos Daf Kuf Tes, and we're starting at the very bottom line of Kuf Ches Amud Beis with a new Mishnah. Sometimes the father-in-law can fall on hard times, so the Gemara deals with a case like that, right? And the Mishnah opens at the bottom line of Kuf Ches Amud Beis with the following scenario. A father-in-law says, I'm going to give you, my son-in-law, money to learn in Kollel for 20 years. You never have to get up. You can sit and learn. We'll serve you on hand and foot. And then upashat loas haregel. And then his leg fell out from under him. Or we have a similar colloquialism in our parlance, whatever the exact language is. We have different ones, but everything fell out from under him. There's a diun here in the postgame about whether or not he's saying like, clean off my feet, pashat es haregel, and I still won't give you anything, or if it's like, even if you hold me upside down by my feet, different kinds of phrases as to what is actually meant here, unclear in the Gemara. But what we know for sure is that the language of upashat lo haregel, take a look at Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom, lashon bizayon hu amar noesh she'eno chash dvarav toltit she'al gabe ragli, to even take the dirt off my feet. Fine. The point is that he has no money. So what happens to the marriage? Now this is before Nisuin. So they're engaged halachically, but they're not married.
This is considered like one of the time.
Well, let's see how far it goes. So it says the Mishnah Machlokes and the Tanoim. Top line of Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. Teshev ad shetalbin rosha. She's stuck until she is a white-haired woman. Very, very, very sharp line. That means that even though the father was the one who made the condition, the daughter is the one who pays the price. What?
Sorry, daughter pays?
Oh, no, pays the price in concept. Yeah, not pays money. She's the one who is the victim here because she ends up being an aguna. And in fact, that's the language in some of the Rishonim that she's going to basically be an aguna. We'll see more of this soon.
The husband or the potential husband can just say, we're done.
Admon says, here's what's going on. He said, I disagree with the Tanakama. The Tanakama was of the opinion that she can grow old, but she's not halachically married and the husband has no obligation to divorce her. Admon says, she can say, Ilu ani pasakti la'atzmi, if I was the one who gave of my money into this marriage, then you're right. Then you're right. Then I should be sitting here until I'm all white-haired. And you can trap me as an aguna. But achshav she'aba pasak, I'm not the one who made the deal with you. My father is the one who is pasak with you. He made the deal with you. Mani yachola la'asot, o kenos, o pator. Either marry me, even though you're not getting the condition fulfilled, o pator, or divorce me and let me go. What she's saying is that you're holding a cloud over my head for my father's wrongdoings. That's not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. What does the Gemara say? Amar Rabban Gamliel, roe ani es divrei admon. We see this is now the third Mishnah, I think, that we've seen Rabban Gamliel agreeing with Admon, and we'll analyze somewhat of a complex Gemara at the bottom of this page about when we listen to Rabban Gamliel, when we listen to Admon, when we listen to all of the other people here. It's not so simple. We'll get into that in a minute. What? No, she's a grusha. Yeah, she's a grusha. Kohen Gadol. Yeah, Kohen. The Gemara says, opens up Masnisin, our Mishnah is the Lohi Ki Haitana. Our Mishnah is divergent from the following brisa. Now, our case, our Gemara says that the machlokes of the Tanakama and Admon is when the father was pasak the funds, when he said, I'm giving you money, my son-in-law, and then he fails to pay up. But here we see differently. The Tanya, the brisa writes, Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda, Lo nechleku Admon v'chachamim al haposek mos l'chasano. We are not talking about the case that our Mishnah said we were talking about, which is where the father-in-law commits funds to the son-in-law, and then upashat lo haregel, then he goes bankrupt. Everyone agrees, Abba pasak alai, ma'ani yechola la'asos. So basically, our Mishnah is not the machlokes. So we see that this brisa is quite different. What does the brisa say the machlokes is? Alma nechleku. What is the brisa saying the argument is about? Al shepaska hi al atzma. Exactly what our Mishnah said was not the case. So the Mishnah and the Brisa don't agree. The Brisa says the machlokes is where she says, you're my husband, I'm going to be on my own salary, I'm going to pay you from a trust fund that I have that no one else has access to for you to learn for 20 years, and then she loses all of her money in the stock market. Now what? There we say, Shechachamim Omrim Teshev Ad Shetal Ben Rosha. There she's a direct cause of the problem. It wasn't her father. There's no proxies here. She did it herself. She said, I'll give you, in addition to my salary, an extra $50,000 a year to sit in Steig, and then she falls on hard times. So the Tanakama says, white-haired, she can be stuck as an aguna. And then the Gemara says, Admon Omer, here we see the machlokas, the Chachamim and Admon. Admon Marichola Hisha Tomar. She can say, Kasvurani Sha'abanos in a line. I thought I could have fallen back on my father. That's what I told my mortgage company. Don't worry. Yeah, not everything works out. My dad's going to cover for you. It's fine. So that's exactly what she did. Thanks, Dad. She said, she's the one who said, I'll give you $50,000 a year. Then she fell in hard times. My dad's going to cover you. So Admon says that's a halachically valid argument. And therefore, she does not sit until she's white-haired. The husband has to make a choice. O kenos, o pator, marry me or don't, but you can't leave me like this. And she said, now that my father isn't covering for my failure to do what I committed, mani chola lasos, o kenos, o pator. That's the second. That's what the Brisa says. And Amar Rabban Gamliel roa ani es divrei Admon.
She wasn't pouring the wool over his eyes.
No.
She hasn't. She just fell on her time.
Correct.
Well,
then how do you fall on hard times if you don't have the money?
No.
She started with a huge bank account, and Bernie Madoff was her investor, and it turned out she had nothing, or the stock market crashed. Yeah, she had the money. There's a lot to discuss here in regards to fairness and in regards to right and wrong, but the fundamental discussion here, to put it in the terms of that we're used to, is this really the meat and potatoes of the ksuba or not? If it is, okay, that's a problem. She made a commitment. It's a shtar. And why do I have to do my part of the deal if you didn't do your part of the deal? If you say it's like a tosefes ksuba, okay, like some of our language. So that would really be where the Rishonim will try and figure out exactly what's going on and why there would ever be a case that we've learned throughout Yevamos and on Shabbos. We just learned that because of Eid Echad, we mishumiguna kilu barabanan, that a woman can remarry based on the testimony of one person. Even her kids wouldn't get food from the husband with one Eid. That's what we saw the other day. Yet here we're saying that she'd be trapped as an aguna. It's very difficult Gemara, very difficult Mishnah. But that's what the Gemara says. Okay. We're a third of the way down. Tana, we have a Brisa. The Gemara Rashi here points out what's going on here. This is a continuation of the Brisa we just learned. Bamed varim amurim. What are we talking about? When is this case true where we see this machlokas bigdola? Only if she is an adult. Aval biktana kofin. However, had she been a ktana, then kofin, we force. Who do we force? Do we force the woman who committed to pay the money? Do we force her to figure out a way to find the money? Or do we force the husband to divorce? We don't know. And the Gemara goes through a couple of iterations. Kofin laman, then if, and this language is difficult, but if the father, we can force the father. Remember what we said. The wife is the one who committed, the daughter, right? She's the one who committed to her husband. She bailed. Do we force the father to pay? Is that what it means? No, it says the Gemara, that shouldn't be true by a ketana, which was what the Gemara just said. That should be true by a gedola. The ketana, her marriage isn't even a marriage midoraisa. She's a child. It's not even a marriage midoraisa. So why would we make the father overstretch to pay for her daughter's overcommitment of funds when the girl's a ketana? The marriage is a din derabanan. At most, the marriage is derabanan. Ella, so it should have been that maybe we would have forced the father to cover if the daughter was a gedola, maybe. Ella, that can't be it. Amarava, kofin labal litain get. That's the din, is that when it comes to a ketana, kofin, we force there to be a get put into place or marriage. So why is it that when it comes to a gedola, we leave her an aguna, but when it comes to a ketana, we force the issue? Huh? In both cases, she was Pascal Atzma. I'm asking a different question, which is, and I don't have an answer, I'm just saying it out loud. The Ketana, her marriage is a din derabanan. Okay, so there we say kofin, marry her or divorce her. If she's a gdola, where her marriage is deoraisa, we say teisha b'at talbot. You sit there until you become an old lady.
I'm sorry, I'm confused about one thing. In this case, did the woman, even if she was a minor, say that she would pay because her father couldn't? Like
she may, yeah. No, she said, I'm going to pay. And then when she defaulted, her father did or did not pay. And the Gemara is saying, do we force the father to cover his daughter's commitments? That's what we're asking. Chora? Seems that way. The whole marriage is a din d'Rabbanan. The Gemara certainly assumes we can trust her enough. And the question is, what does kofin mean? So in the Havamina, we said kofin means that if the daughter is 10 and she's married and she makes a commitment and she defaults, then then the father, who by the way might be 25 under these circumstances, remember, very young, could be 22, very young, he has to pay. And then we reject that and say, no, that's not actually the case. Instead, we force the husband to divorce her. But I'm asking, why is it that we force a divorce when she's only a ketana, but when she's a gdola, we leave her an aguna? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just throwing it out. Worth looking in the Rishon and let me know if you find something. Next, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar, halfway down on Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, Mishmei Dechizkiya. Kol makom she'amar Rabban Gamliel. Whenever Rabban Gamliel says the phrase Roe ani es divrei admon halacha kamosa. Whenever Rabban Gamliel chimes in a Mishnah, as he's done a handful of times over this parak of Parak Shnei Dainei, the halacha is then like him, which is basically like Admon and like Rabban Gamliel. They both agree because he's supporting Admon. Okay. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman afilu bibraisa. Is that also true in a brisa? The Gemara responds kind of like, what are you talking about? Of course. Amar le mika amrina b'mishnah. Did you hear me say anything else? Sometimes we say that as parents. We're like, do I, please go clean your room. Do I have to clean my room this week? Did you hear me say to clean your room at a later point? Go clean your room right now. So when the Gemara says the halacha is like Admon, whenever Rabban Gamliel says so, everywhere? Yes, everywhere. What are you asking everywhere for? Yes, everywhere. In a Mishnah and in a Brisa, it doesn't matter. That's what the Gemara seems to say. And then the Gemara says, Mi karmina b'mishnah b'chol makom sham Rabban Gamliel. Come in. Wherever Rabban Gamliel says that the halacha is like Admon, we paskin like him. Then the Gemara says, that's statement number one. And then we're going to go into this next statement, which is much more complex. So that was the easier part of this section of the Gemara. And here the Gemara says, let's dig in. Amar Reb Zera, Amar Rabba bar Yirmiyah. Beis dvarim she'amar Chanan, halacha kiyotzebo. When Chanan taught us two halachos, the halacha is kayotzebo. What does kayotzebo mean? It means that the Mishnah, when it quoted the Shita of Chanan, also said that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai holds like kayotzebo. That Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai also held like Chanan. So says the Gemara, that's part one. And part two is Shiva Dvarim Shamar Admon, the 7 statements that Admon said, Ein halacha kayotzebo. The halacha is not like them. Is not like Rabban Gamliel, who was the counterpart. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? My kamar, what does this line mean? Ilema, says the Gemara, if you want to say hachi kamar, here is pshat in this line of Reb Zera. Hachi kamar, shnei dvarim shamar Chanan halacha kimosa v'chayotzebo. Like we understood that whenever we see that the halacha is like Chanan, the two things that he said and that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai agreed with, then the halacha is like him. But v'shiva dvarim shamar Admon, ein halacha kamoso v'lo kayotzebo. Not only is the halacha not like Admon, but even when Rabban Gamliel says that the halacha is like him, we don't paskin like Rabban Gamliel either. Says the Gemara, that makes no sense because we just learned 10 lines ago, not even, that when Rabban Gamliel says something, that's the din. That's what Rabbi Yamin, that's the line you were quoting last night or yesterday. So you can't say that when Admon has the support of Rabban Gamliel that the halacha is like neither of them, because that's not true. Rabban Gamliel, we do paskin like him. When Rabban Gamliel agrees with Admon, then we're all well and good. So the Gemara says, good question. Elahachi kamar, 2 lines before the wide lines. Really, what's going on? Shnei dvarim she'amar Chanan. The first part of the sentence is about Chanan. So when Chanan had said his 2 things, halacha kamosa v'chayotzebo. When we paskin like him, we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. That's the easy piece. And on the first long line, the Gemara says, Shiva dvarim she'amar Admon. The 7 shitas that Admon said, ein halacha kayotzebo. The halacha is not like him. However, says the Gemara, hakamoso halacha bekulhu. But when the halacha is like Admon, when Rabban Gamliel agrees, and the halacha is like him in all cases, says the Gemara, only in certain cases is that true. It's not in all cases of Admon. After all, the Amar of Yitzchak, the same line we saw a moment ago, Ben Elazar, Mishmei Dechizkiya, Kol Makom Sham Rabban Gamliel, Ro Nies Divrei Admon halacha kamoso, Amar in. Only when Rabban Gamliel agrees with him do we say that the halacha is like Admon. Lo Amar lo. But if the Gemara doesn't say that the halacha is like Admon, if Rabban Gamliel doesn't come to support him, then seemingly, what would be the implications? Halacha is not like Admon. So Admon should only have the halacha like him when Rabban Gamliel agrees. He needs the Rebbe's psak to actually have any fruits to his shitas. So therefore, the Gemara tries for the third and final version, and that will bring us to the next Mishnah. Elahachi kamar shnei dvarim shamar Chanan halacha kamosa v'chayotzebo. We haven't had any questions about that yet. The halacha is like Chanan in the cases where kayotzebo, which is a reference to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he comes and chimes along and agrees. And lastly, Shiva dvarim shamar Admon, the 7 shitas of Admon. Sometimes the halacha is like him and the one who follows him up, namely Rabbi Gamliel. And some of the halachas are not like him, rather like the other shita, like Rabbi Gamliel. And and that's how we would paskin in regards to Admon, that halacha l'maisa. In all the cases of Admon, the only time we paskin like him is when Rabbi Gamliel is present and agrees with him. Otherwise, we don't paskin like Admon. So if we were to look at all 7 of the Mishnayos that we've been learning wherever Admon is found, we only agree with him halacha l'maisa when Rabbi Gamliel is there. Now, we discussed this yesterday. We saw Rabbi Gamliel in the Gemara. It wasn't paskin that way. Ladina, again, we need Rishonim for that. That's not for our shiur. But that requires Rishonim to understand how we got from our page to Shulchan Aruch, because they're not the same thing. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes even in Shulchan Aruch, you'll see the Shach and the Taz look at a Ramah and say, this is not halacha because he didn't look at the Gemara, which of course he did. Obviously, you have to get into the nitty gritties. But that does happen sometimes where the Shach and the Taz will argue with the Ramah because they said you missed something blaring in the Gemara. How could you paskin that way? Okay, that brings us to a new Mishnah. Put on your thinking cap. Says the Gemara, Orer al hasadeh v'hu chasam aleha be'ed. There are 3 people. There's Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. Ruvain owned a field which was stolen by Levi. Levi's a thief. Levi took that stolen field, put it on the black market, and sold it to Shimon. Do you know who was one of the signatories on that sale from Levi to Shimon? Ruvain. So Ruvain signed a document on a field that was stolen from him to sell it from the thief to Shimon. Okay, that's this case. Ha'orer al hasadeh, hey, that's my field. Yet my signature is on the star between the thief and the recipient of the new product, of this new field. Admon Omer, not so fast. Even though it's true that I'm claiming the field and I'm a signatory on that contract, it's okay. Why? Because I was trying to get it out of the hands of the thief. Says the Mishnah, Hasheni noachli. I'd rather deal with the recipient of the field, not the thief. Shimon, I'd much rather deal with Shimon, who's an innocent bystander. He didn't do anything wrong. I'd much rather deal with him in Bezdin than deal with Levi. Hasheni noachli, I'd much rather deal with Shimon. Veharishon kasha himenu. Levi, he's a real jerk. Obviously, he's not known. He doesn't win the Midos award because he's a thief. He steals things. So that's what's going on in our Mishnah. V'chachamim omrim, no. Ibed esechuso. When Ruvain, who really does own the field, the second he signs on the star for that stolen field from Levi to Shimon, he loses his rights to the field. Machlokas Admon and the Chachamim. Case clear? Ruvain's field, Levi steals it, Levi sells it to Shimon. Happens to be that Ruvain is the witness on the document, and according to Admon, that is plenty reason for him to assume he could still take that field to Bezdin, take Shimon to Bezdin and get his field back, because Levi's really difficult to deal with.
Ruvain had no clue that the field that he was signing.
He knew. That's the svar of the Mishnah. But I'd rather deal with the buyer than with Levi, because Levi's a thief. Levi's very, very difficult. Sometimes in work we do that too. You avoid the landmines at work. You're like, oh, I'll go to the other cubicle and get the problem solved in a more efficient, less complex way. I think we all do that. I do it every day. I do it all the time. I hope none of them are watching my Daf Yomi shiur. Who's on here today? No. It's Brandis is sitting there like, oh. Okay. Anyways, the last case of the Mishnah is still more complicated, is asa siman la'acher. If the document that Ruvain signed and the property that we're talking about is not really the property that Ruvain owned, but it's the property next to the property that Ruvain owned, property number 2. And in that document, one of the 4 walls was actually, one of the 4 parts of the field was used to say is a border to Ruvain's field, right? And that's how he was trying to get back to his field. Then the Gemara says, Ibed esechu. So in that case, he doesn't have the noachli argument, because you don't have to, Levi didn't steal that field. Levi stole your other field. So therefore, he loses the argument, and then seemingly everyone agrees Ibed esechu. So we'll dig into this more in the Gemara. 2 lines from the bottom of the page on Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, the Gemara says as follows. Amar Abaye, lo shanu ela eid. In our first case in the Mishnah, when Ruvain is bringing Shimon to Bezdin, and we had said that Ruvain was not only the owner of the field, but also the signatory on the poor sale between Levi and Shimon on this field, it's only true that Admon would ever have an argument if this person was an aid. Aval dayan lo ibed ezechuso. But when you're a dayan, if he was the dayan in court on the sale between Levi and Shimon about his own field, lo ibed ezechuso. Everyone seemingly agrees. Even the Chachamim who said Ibed Eschuso in our Mishnah, but if you're the Dayan, it's very different. Why? Says the Gemara, Alumdus in Dayanim versus Eidim. What's the difference between the mindset of an aid and the mindset of a dayan? The Gemara says, the Tani Reb Chia, Ein ha'edim chosman al ashtar, ela im kein kira'uhu. Witnesses, they have a job. Their job is to testify that everything in that document is accurate. They have to read the date. They have to read who the parties are, the buyer and the seller. They have to read, not the way we sign our mortgages, but like they read everything. They know exactly what was going on. That's an aid. However, says the Gemara on the top of Kuf Testament Beis, as an aid, so that he's not no Geba Davar, because the Gemara says on the top of Kuf Testament Beis, Aval Hadayanim Chos Menafal Bishlo Keru'u. When a dayan is adjudicating over a sale like this, he doesn't have to know every blessed detail, and it could be representatives in the Beis Din instead of the actual buyer and seller. And it could be a sale of a field between Levi and Shimon. He may know Levi's a thief, even though he shouldn't be a dayan if he knows Levi's the thief. So obviously we have to work on the dayanos issues. We learned about the dayan issues a couple of days ago, that you're not allowed to be a dayan. You have to recuse yourself when you hate someone, when you love someone. So let's just say Levi sent an apotropos, he sent a shliach, and the buyer, Shimon, was there, but Shimon's a good guy, right? So the dayanim sit there, they're like, okay, I see all the money's transferred, mazel tov, goodbye. But they don't read this document actually belongs to Levi. He may not have ever known the Levi on the field. So the Gemara says the difference between an aid and a dayan is that an aid, we presume, reads everything in the contract. A dayan does not. And therefore, the distinction would be that in the ratio of our case, if Ruvain, who really owned the field, adjudicated over a sale between Levi and Shimon, but there were proxy people, so he didn't know it was Levi, that sale is a valid sale. And that property, Ruvain can still take Shimon to Beis Din. But you are the dayan on the case for the sale between Levi. It doesn't matter. I didn't read the fine print. I don't have to read the fine print. Look at what Rav Chia says. It's crazy. It also sounds very strange to me because I can't imagine a dayan not having all the details clear. I can't imagine.
You don't think Rabbi Reese reads every single document?
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
But we're talking about and whether or not what's the halachic minimum in the Gemara. The halachic minimum is that the dayan does not need to read every page.
But they're not adjudicating this. That's what the law to certify it. So
Correct. You're correct. It's not really the right word. It's to be machzik the shtar.
Right.
What was the language in the Rishonim? There was a language we learned it.
It feels a little bit better. It's not as much of a responsibility to certify something.
That doesn't feel any different to me. It's the same question in my head. The dayan doesn't have to know who the buyer and seller are. I don't know. That sounds strange to me. It has to be that way because if he knew it was Levi, he'd know he'd have to recuse himself.
No, it sounds like it's more like a notary.
It's a notary type of thing. That's true. Even when you go get something notarized, who's who? I don't know. It's
The details are like whose properties are involved in this.
yeah.
So we have the case with Rabbi Shimon.
Mm-hmm. What was the case?
The case was with the property that belonged to the husband.
Yeah.
And Rabbi said that like there was a problem with that because the property didn't belong to.
I don't remember the case.
No.
No. You're supposed to be that person. That's your job. You're the memory bank. I foam at the mouth and try not to embarrass myself. But when you, you'll find it. You'll find it. Let me know. Let's continue because we still have a bit to go and we're not done with this page yet. Says the Gemara as follows: Amar Abaye lo shanu elo la'acher. Oh, sorry, I skipped the words asa siman la'acher. The second part of the Mishnah, where what Ruvain is doing is he's trying to get a hold of the field next to his field, because in that document it says that the border of property 2 is Ruvain's property, and that's how he's gonna get the chafarayin and get the first field back. So the Gemara says, Amar Abaye lo shanu elo la'acher, aval la'atzmo lo ibid esechuso. That depends. If he's buying that property, then lo ibid esechuso. But if it's bought by somebody else, then he will lose out his rights. To Amar, the argument is, he could argue, the only way for me to get access to property 1 is by being involved in property 2. And lo hava mazbin lanehale, the Levi would never sell that field to me. because he knows that he owes me property one. My islach lememar, iboyle lemimsar moda. You wanted me to make a public declaration with edim? Like if I do that, says the Gemara, a very well-known line that's used in various contexts, but the point is always accurate. Chavrach, your friend, Chavra Isla, he has a friend. The Chavra, Chavra Isla. There's a song that was made after this Gemara, and the Gemara says basically when one person, the secrets can't be kept. So even if I tell someone the reason why I'm doing this, why I'm signing on the shtar, is because then in that shtar it indicates that property one is really mine. But if you tell that to someone, then word's going to get out. Levi's going to find out, and Levi's not going to sell the property to me. So really, Ruvain has only one avenue to get his property back. That's why the Gemara says that if he ends up being the one who signs it, good to go. But if somebody else signs it, not good to go. The Gemara says there's a story. Hahuda saw Simen la'acher. There was a case like our Mishnah where property two is being used to indicate who owned property one. There was a complaint, and Vishachiv, the person died, and before he died, V'okim aputropa, he had set someone as a responsible party to work out all the funds for the Yisomim. Because remember, let's just use Ruvain in this case. It was Ruvain's property. Ruvain was Ma'ar. He says, that's really my property. And then he died, and the apotropos jumps in. So this apotropos is defending Yisomim. He's defending Ruvain's estate. So the Gemara says, "Asa apotropos lakamid Abaye." This apotropos, as we'll soon see, he did really, really well on behalf of the Yisomim. He did some great arguing with the Dayanim here. Omar le asa simin laacher ibedes zechuso. Ruvain ruined it because he was involved in this case scenario where property two is being used as property one, and our Mishnah says that in those cases ibedes zechuso, when the second he signs on that document, he's done for. Then the Gemara says, Omar. The apotropos says back to Abaye, that's not fair, because had the father of the Yisomim been alive, what would he have argued? I saved one row of the field as an indicator. Not that the whole field is on property too. It's just that outer one. That's the only one that really belongs to me. Amarle Shapir Ka'amris. Abaye says back to him, "Wow, you're a smart guy, Mr. Apotropa." Damar of Yochanan, Imtan v'Amar Telem Echad Asisi Lachneman. We trust him. So then the Gemara says, "Zil Havle Mihas Telem Echad." So then we should be giving that one row over. And Hava Aleha, on that one row, there was Richba Dedikle. There was a row of palm trees. Amarle, Ihava Avuhon de Yasmi Kayam, and he says back to Abaye again, this apotropa, had Ruvain been alive, the father of the Yisomim been alive, have a time v'amar chazarti v'lakachti mimenu. He could have come up with a ruse that tell him I owned it and then I sold it and then I bought it back, and that claim is actually valid. And Abaye says, Amarle, Shapir Kamras, another good job. The Amar of Yochanan, Imtan v'amar chazarti v'lakachti mimenu ne'aman. And Amar Abaye, as a warm compliment to this guy who did everything he could to get this field back on behalf of Ruvain, who is now dead, and this apotropa was responsible with keeping as much property in the estate as possible. Amar Abaye, Hai man demokim apotropa. If you're going to be getting an agent to take care of you, nokim ki hai yadala afuche b'schusa diyasme. You should get a guy like this. He really knows what he's talking about. He's very learned. You know, if you want a tax lawyer, if you need a tax lawyer, don't hire a medical lawyer. Hire a tax lawyer, and a good one. Because that's what happened. I remember we had this thing where the IRS sent me something after I bought my first house. You really weren't eligible for the first time homeowners to, $8,000 or something. I was like a Rabbi Phil Karesh. I was destitute. So I got a tax lawyer to help me. It was very helpful. Just if you hire the right lawyer, you'll do great. You hire the wrong lawyer, you got a big problem. Okay, that's what the Gemara says, new Mishnah. A little bit easier, and then we'll take this to the last word on the page. The Mishnah says, halfway down on Kuf Tes in the days, a man goes out of town. When he left, he had a walkway to get from his house to his field. While he was gone, people covered over the fields. So it says the Gemara, what should he do? What?
The walkway.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The walkway was, yeah, I didn't know which error I made. So it says the Gemara that his walkway to get to his field was covered over. So Admon Omer, oh, that's just the way things are, but it doesn't mean you can't access your field. Yelech lo biksara. Find the field where you're taking the fewest number of steps in the field, the shortest path from A to B, figure it out. That's your new pathway. So then the Chachamim say, why? The Chachamim omrim, yikne lo derech b'mei mana. You make him pay for it, or yifrach be'avir, or tell the guy he can go fly a kite. Tell him he can go fly in the air. Wait, you just get to walk on other people's property just for fun? And I was like, how does that work? I know you used to have a walkway, but who says that this guy has to be the mevater to give up part of his field? My time of derabanan, Shapir Ka'amar Admon. Admon did have a point. What was Admon's point? Admon's point was, well, there used to be a way to get to the field. There's got to be a way to get in. So says the Gemara, if that's true, Amar Yehuda Marav, Kigon Shikifua Arba Bnei Adam Me Arba Ruchosea. 4 owners, east, west, north, and south, and cover the corners. And while he was gone, the fields that were unsold are now sold. So who's supposed to give up? The east guy? Why? Go take from north, west, and south. Why are you taking from me? And everyone's going to kick the can down the road. Nobody has the halachic right the halachic obligation, I should say, to give him a piece of land, a strip of land to walk in.
He doesn't remember where the path was.
No, it was, that property was sold. He had a walkway.
That's where the path was.
Doesn't matter. But why? But now there's a new guy who lives on since I went out of town, 4 guys right here. These 4 sides are all sold out. Mine was right here, but there's a guy who has corn growing right. What? He has to give me the square footage for me to walk. Yeah, I mean, we would probably be nice about it. We'd come up with a solution, but halacha l'maisa, like brass tacks, how do you figure this out? So that's what the Gemara says. Ihachi says the Gemara, if there are 4 owners on each side, my time of the Admon. Admon, yeah, you're right. There used to be a path, but now there's no space around your field that's accessible. So why does anyone have to give up property for you when no one knows for sure that it's their property to give up? Amar Rava, be'arba de'asu mikoach arba. When we're talking about 4 people who bought from 4 separate sellers, be'arba de'asu mikoach echad, or even 4 people who bought from 1 seller, that each person can kick the can to the other neighbor. Everyone agrees in that case that Admon is wrong. There's no derech tzara there because everyone had a clean purchase of land. Clean. The way you got to your land before really wasn't your land. It was just unsold property. Now people own that property. So kipligi, because everyone agrees that doesn't work. So where is the machlokas of our Mishnah? Says the Gemara brilliantly, bechad to asimikoch arba. 1 person bought from 4 different people. Admon savar mikol makom darcha isli gabach manafshach. If you're the owner of all 4 properties, there is no question that I used to have a walkway in one of your 4 properties. Now give me my derech tzara. That's for sure. That makes perfect sense. The Rabbanan, how did the Rabbanan get out of this one? The Rabbanan savar ishaskis shaskis. Tough language in the Gemara. If you're quiet, then you're quiet. It means if you'll buy one, then you'll buy one, even though the words don't mean that, but that's what's going on. So it says the Gemara will get you a spot. Remember, I bought from 4 people. I'm one guy who bought from 4 people. I'll just sell back the properties and then you're stuck. Because no one of those 4 different sellers has to give you anything. So that's what the Rabbanan say. Story. A father was about to die and he said, my daughter gets the financial value of a palm tree. Azal Yasme. The boys, they say we're boys, we get a Yerusha. They divided the property, and lo yavu la dikla, but they didn't end up giving her the palm tree that she rightfully deserved. Savar Rav Yosef lemeimar hainu masnisen. And Rav Yosef says, this is our mission of kicking the can, because the brother owns field 1, 2, field 1. Brother 1 owns field 1. Brother 2 owns field 2. Bechule bechule. Who's the one brother who has to give up a tree for her? Same as our Mishnah, kicking the can. Says the Gemara, Amar le Abaye, mi dami. These cases are not comparable. The case of our Mishnah, where we kick the can for the walkway, and the case in our Mishnah of the tree are not the same. Hasam, over there, kol chad b'chad matzi madchile. Hacha dikla gabayhu. It's different. Over there by the walkway, there's no walkway anymore. But over here, there's a palm tree. The cases are not comparable. So therefore, you cannot compare them. My taknosaihu, how do we solve this problem for her? And the Gemara says we need to redo the math. Leis v'la dikla, we do in fact give her a tree, and then the brothers calculate what they take. The 2x of all the brothers, that can only happen once we've reduced the total cost of the estate by that 1 dekel tree. That's the right way to do it, because then, at least by math, the brothers are each giving an equal amount to the sister in the form of a tree. Now they're doing it in cash. Oh, right. That's a different issue. You're combining our Mishnah and the Sugya. That would be the best. That's what the Gemara says. And then after they give her a tree, then they have to redivide. Last little sugya for the night, same story, different details. Hahuda Amar Lahu. Father says to the brothers, Dikla lebras, there has to be a tree for the sister, for my daughter. And Shachiv, he died. Vishavik tre palga de dikla, and there were two halves of a tree. Yasiv Ravashi v'kakashale, mikaru inshi the tre palga dikla olo. Do we call two halves of a palm tree a palm tree? And the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Mordechai le Ravashi, Hachi Amar Avimi mehagrunia mishmei de Rava. Karu inshi litre palge dikla. We do in fact refer to two halves of a palm tree as a palm tree, and therefore, if a father says, "Give my daughter X," and all you can find is half X and half X, halacha is that still counts. Of course, there will be qualifications in order to make it all work out, but we'll stop right here. Tomorrow night, Amir Hashem at 8:40 here in person. I believe that's going to be the case. I have to see if it's not, it'll be on Zoom, but I'm pretty sure we'll be here. But we'll pick up tomorrow night with Daf Kuf Yud. Wishing you all a beautiful night.